Hello again. So this is the part 2 for our process cost system. Okay, so we will be discussing about the remaining lesson or objective or learning objective, which is about the equivalent units. Okay, so for you to understand what is all about equivalent units, equivalent units of production is most of the topics that were discussed under this part. Okay, so equivalent units of production is a measure of the work done during the period. It is expressed in fully completed units. So some of the terms that we will be dealing with this aspect is about operation costing, the physical units, the production cost reports, the total units accounted for, or another is the total units or cost to be accounted for. Okay, so and another is the unit production costs and the weighted average method. So hopefully ma-discuss natin ng mabuti here sa part 2. Okay, so let's proceed. Okay, so let's see here the illustration para kung paano natin i-discuss about the equivalent unit. So, take a look at the illustration. Okay, so the illustration involves the information for full-time student. Okay, so suppose you have a work-study job in the office of your college president and she asks you to compute the cost of instruction per full-time equivalent students at your college. So the college Vice President for Finance provides the following information. So you have the cost or the total cost of instruction, which is 9 million. And the student population, you have 900 full-time students and 1,000 part-time students. Okay? So to continue, part-time students take 60% of the classes of a full-time student during the year. So, meaning, yung mga part-time students, 60% of them, nag-full-time sila. Okay? So, to compute the number of full-time equivalent students per year, you would make the following computation. So, full-time students, ilan yung full-time students natin? Kanina. Then, the equivalent units of part-time is equivalent to the full-time equivalent students. Okay? So, paano yon? How would we compute for the equivalent units? So, kanina, okay. So, pen. Yun. Okay, so kanina, nakita natin that we have 900. Sorry for kung paano mag-drawing. So, we have 900 plus the equivalent units of part-time. Sabi natin kanina 60%. Tama? So, 60. Okay. Okay, so 60% times, ilan yung part-time natin? 1,000. Tama? Okay. So, we have here, how many full-time now? Okay, so how many full-time? Ito yon. So, 1,500. Ang hirap kasi mag-drawing. So, 1,500 siya. So, 9 million total cost of instruction. Tama? Divided by 1,500 is equivalent to 6,000. So, paano yon? The cost of instruction per full-time equivalent student is therefore the total cost of instruction, which is the 9 million. Okay? Divided by the total of full-time equivalent students, which is 1,500. Now, we have the total number of full-time students. We have now computed that the equivalent units, which is the 6,000. Okay, so 6,000 is the equivalent units. A process cost system uses the same idea, which they call the equivalent units of production. Yun yung sinabi ko kanina, ang meaning ng equivalent units for production is a measure of the work done during the period expressed in fully completed units. Okay, so companies or the schools like this use this measure to determine the cost per unit of completed product. Okay, so napakasimpleng instruction yon. Okay, on how to compute for the equivalent units. Okay, now let's proceed. Malinaw tayo dun guys ha. Kasi sabi niya 60% nung mga part-time nag full-time. Okay, so yun lang. Then next natin is we have to compute for the weighted average method. Okay, so the formula for computing the equivalent units of production using weighted average method is the units completed and transferred out. To and transferred out plus the equivalent units ending of ending process, which is equivalent to units of production. Okay, so to better understand this concept of equivalent units, mayroon tayong gagawing illustrations para at least mas further maintindihan pa natin what is the concept of equivalent units. Okay, so let's proceed with another example. This is the output of Cory Company. Okay, so during the period, meron siyang 10,000 units completed and transferred out. And meron siyang 5,000 units in ending work in process. Kung saan, 70% completed. Okay? So, the equivalent units of production are, tingnan nyo, 13,500. How did they arrive at 10,500? Okay? So, 10,000 plus 3,500. Paano naging 3,500? Kasi may natitira pa tayong work in process. And sabi nila, 70% of it completed. So, 5,000 times 70%, 3,500. So, that is equivalent to 13,500, yung completed, tsaka yung na-complete at the end. And that is the equivalent units of production using the average weighted mean. Okay, so another example, Kellogg's. Okay, so you are familiar naman about what is Kellogg's, di ba? Sa cornflakes na penetrate ang Pilipinas nung unang panahon, pero they fail to penetrate Philippines that time because hindi naman lahat kasi tayo mahilig sa mga cereals. More on rice tayo, di ba? Pero ngayon, nape-penetrate na ulit nila. Marami na rin kasi mga bata ngayon na mahilig na rin sa Kellogg products. Okay, so Kellogg Company had produced what they call the Eggo waffle in 1970. So, 3 departments produces these waffles. So, yung meron tayong mixing, the baking, and the freezing or the packaging department. Okay, so the mixing department combines dry ingredients, including the flour, the salt, and the baking powder with liquid ingredients. Okay, so including eggs and vegetables to make the waffle batter. Okay, so the illustration 7.9, ito, gives an information for us relating to the mixing department at the end of June. So ito yon, illustrating that, kunwari, ito yung kanilang informations under the mixing department at the end of June. So this indicates that the beginning work in process is 100%. Tama? Complete as to material cost and 70% naman as to conversion cost. Okay? Conversion cost, guys, is the sum of labor costs and the overhead cost. Conversion cost yun. Okay? So, material cost is 70% complete as to conversion cost. Okay? Conversion cost, Kellogg's, in other words, add both the dried and the liquid ingredients at the beginning of the waffle making process. And the conversion cost, which includes the, sabi nga natin, the labor and the overhead related to the ingredients incurred uniformly and are 70% completed. So the ending work in process is 100% as to material costs and 60% naman as to conversion cost. Ito na yung sa transfer niya. Okay? So, natapos na tayo doon as to conversion cost, 70%, which includes only the labor cost and the overhead. Then, nung nag-transfer na sila, at the end, June 30, meron tayong automatic, the materials, 100%. And as to the labor and overhead costs, 60%. So, we then use the mixing department information to determine the equivalent unit. So, in computing equivalent cost, okay, so look at the informations. Now, using the mixing department information to determine the equivalent cost, in computing such, itong equivalent units natin, the beginning working process is not part of the equivalent units of production formula. Tandaan nyo yun, ha? The beginning working process is not part of the equivalent units of production formula. So, the units transferred out to the baking department are fully complete as to both materials and conversion costs. Yun yung kanina. So, the ending working process is fully completed as to materials, but only 60% complete as to conversion costs. Therefore, we need to make two equivalence units computation, di ba? One for the materials and another one for the conversion cost. Gaya ng nakikita nyong information. Ito. Yan. Okay, so tandaan nyo dyan guys ha, that beginning working process is not part, okay, is not part of the equivalent units of production formula. Ang ginagamit na lang natin dito when we transferred it is the information na nakuha natin kanina to make two equivalent computation, one for the materials and one for the conversion cost. Okay, so the 100% nung June 1 and 60% na lang siya nung last. Okay, so tandaan nyo guys, under the materials, ang ginagamit natin is the 100%. And dito naman is the 60%. Ito yung tinransferred siya. 100% na siya kasi na-transfer na siya. Kung maalala nyo yung mga different formulas natin or different explanation natin nung part 1, na once na na-transfer na siya, automatically lahat ng mga materials, ano yung tatlo? Materials cost, labor cost, tsaka yung overhead natin is nagamit na siya. Kasi ang process cost or process costing system, nagtitake effect lang siya at the end of the period. Okay, so once na na-transfer na siya, nag-end na yung period, so automatically it becomes 100%. Okay, so dito naman, sa work in process niya, so June 30, when it comes to material cost, 100%. And comes to the conversion cost, we only have 60% according to the information given. So total equivalent units are 900 for materials and 120 or 820 for the conversion cost. So we can refine the information formula used to compute the equivalent units for production. Yung nakita natin kanina sa illustration 8. Yan, illustration 8. Yan. So this is the formula guys, ha? Pakitandaan. Okay? So for you to have an exact equivalent units formula, let's take a look at the example. Okay, ito. So when the information or when the units completed and transferred out plus the ending working process, yun yung equivalent units of production as to materials. Okay? So, in order for you to have the equivalent units for production under conversion cost, syempre, you have to use only the transferred out and as to conversion cost. Yun yung 700 kanina. Diba? Ito lang kasi yung na-transfer. Tama? Then, the ending inventory kung ilang percent, which is the 60%. Okay? Malinaw tayo dun, guys, ha? Okay, so I have here a question. I want you to compute for the equivalent units of production. Okay, so I'm I'm giving you enough time to compute. You can pause for this before you go over with the discussion. So you can pause my video and compute for the equivalent cost of production. Okay, na-compute nyo na ba? So the answer is A, B, C, or D. Okay, so the answer is B. Why? 20,000 units were completed and transferred out. So, malinaw kanina na as to the new computed equivalent units of production, yung 20,000 na yun na na-transferred out will be 100% as to material costs and conversion costs. And the units in ending work in process is 60% complete. So, 60% of 5,000 is 3,000. So, that is 23, that is equivalent to the 23,000 because itong beginning inventory na to, another na naman ito for the next month or the next period kasama ng mga nauna. Okay? So, malinaw tayo dun guys ha? Next. Now, let's proceed to the production costs report. Okay? So, itong production cost report is an internal report for management that shows both the production quantity and the cost data for a production department. So, in order to complete a production cost report, the company must perform the following steps. We have 4 steps, which is, as a whole, make up the process of the process costing system. Yun yung topic natin, okay? So, first is you have to compute the physical unit flow. Second is you have to compute the equivalent units of production. Third is you have to compute for the unit production costs. And lastly is a cost reconciliation schedule. So, for the next sections of this discussion, we will be exploring these steps with extended examples. Okay? So, bago tayo pumunta doon, let's take a look at the illustration here. Okay, so looking at the illustration as mentioned earlier, companies prepare a production cost report for each department. So, here, it shows the production quantity and cost data related to the department. For example, yung pag-produce ng kilogs ng kanilang Ego waffle, they uses three production report, which is the mixing, the baking, and the freezing or the packaging department, diba? So, it shows here the flow of costs to make an Ego waffle and the related production cost report for each department. So, makikita mo dyan yung kanilang production cost report. So, dito sa production cost report under the baking, meron silang dalawa. The raw material factory, diba? Ito yung unang-una. Then, the transfer nila, andito na yung mga units cost hanggang sa mag-finish products na siya. So, take a look at the example here. Yan. So, under the mixing department, ito yung kanyang ginawa. Mayroon siyang units or in units and in costs. Okay, so, assume that the mixing department of kilogs for the month of June, yan. Yan siya. Okay, so for the month of June, this information will be used to complete a production cost report for the mixing department. So, computing the physical unit flow. Step 1, diba? Sabi niya, ano ulit yung una natin? Compute physical unit flow. Okay? So, computing for the units or the physical units are the actual units to be accounted for during a period. So, irrespective of any work performed, still, the physical units are the actual units to be accounted for during that period. So, to keep in track of these units, add the units started or transferred into production during the period to the units in process at the beginning of the period. So, this amount is referred to as the total units to be accounted for. So, yan siya. Okay, ang units is 100,000, naalala nyo? So, ang work in process niya, direct materials niya, 100%. So, ang conversion niya is 70%. Units started into production during June is 800,000. So, units completed and transferred out to baking department is 700,000. So, the working process in June 30, malala nyo, direct materials natin 100% and the conversion cost is 60%. So, how would you convert it into the cost data? Yung cost data naman niya, direct 100. So, the total amount is 50,000. So, take a look at the example kanina. Yung information nila. May information tayong ginawa. Dito. Yan. So, look at the informations natin dyan. Kanya mga amount and ano. Okay? So, you can just go back on the the modules that I attach here for you to cope up with the informations here. Okay? So, the total units then are accounted for the output of the period. Okay? So, the output consists of the units transferred out during the period and any units in process at the end of the period. So, this amount is referred to as the total units accounted for. So, that is shown here naman. Ito na. Yan. 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 Okay? So, this is ito kasi yung steps for you to follow. The physical units, the total units accounted for, and the total units accounted for. Okay? So, here is the step 1. Step 1 is compute the physical unit flow. Okay? So, looking at the material costs natin, so work in process is 100,000. So, started or transferred into production is 800. So, we have total units of 900. And units accounted for is may na-complete na 700, tinransfer na siya, and working process in June 30 is 200,000. Okay? So, tignan niyo yung example dito, 'di ba? Ito yung information nila eh. Okay? So, these are the informations para magkaroon tayo ng guide. So, ito na yan as to units. Okay? So, physical unit flow niya. Okay? So, the record indicates that the mixing department must account for 900,000 units. Tama? Of this sum, we can see that there are 700 units transferred to the baking department and 200,000 units were still in process. Okay? So, ganyan lang yung computing the physical unit flow. So, based yan dito sa information given or na nakuha natin under the mixing department. Okay? So, next natin is the step 2. Okay? So, sa step 2, once the physical flow of the units is established, like for example, ngayon, si Kellogg. So, Kellogg's must measure the mixing department's productivity in terms naman of equivalent units of production. Ito yung step 2. Okay, so the mixing department must add materials at the beginning of the process as it incurs conversion costs uniformly during the process. Okay, so we need two computations here of equivalent units, the materials cost and the conversion cost. Okay, so ito yung computation niya. Kung makikita ninyo, units transferred out during June 30, units transferred out 700,000, and during work in process during June 30 naman, we have 100% and 60% naman. Okay, so we have the total units equivalent. Okay, or total equivalent units. So, ganyan lang i-compute, parang kanina din lang. Diba? So, okay na tayo dito. Diba, na-transfer na to. Pag na-transfer na, automatic na, 100% na rin dito. Kasi lahat ng mga materials, labor, and overhead, andito na lahat. Work in process as of June 30, 200,000, tinransfer siya. Materials cost, 100,000. Ay, 100%. Pagdating sa conversion cost, 60% lang daw. So, 60% din siya. Okay? So, next natin is the step 3. Okay. For the step 3, since you already know about how to compute for the equivalent units of production, we can now compute for the unit production cost. So, kung kanina, kailangan marunong ka kung alam mo kung paano, knowledgeable ka how to compute or how to present your equivalent cost, equivalent unit of production para mas maintindihan mo kung paano i-compute ang unit production cost. Pag sinabi nating unit production cost, guys, it is cost expressed in terms of equivalent units of production. Okay? So, when equivalent units of production are different for materials and conversion costs, we compute the 3 unit costs. Ano ba yung 3 unit cost na yon? Materials, the conversion, and the total manufacturing. So, paano yon? Ito yon. Okay, how to compute for the unit production cost, guys? Okay? So, here, compute for total material cost related to Ego Waffle. So, ang work in process natin in June 1 is, yon. So, kung babalikan natin, guys, ang i-compute natin tatlo. Materials, the conversion, and the total manufacturing. So, ito is the illustration on how to compute for the total material cost dito. Okay? So, work in process June 1. Direct material cost natin, magkano? Magkano yung direct material cost natin kanina? Okay? So, we have 50,000. Okay? 50,000. So, the cost added to production during the June, yung direct material cost niya, magkano? 400, let's say, 400,000. Yan. Okay, so the total material cost natin is 450. Okay, so ito yung ating total material cost. Okay, so madali lang natin i-compute yung total material cost related to the Ego Waffle, ha? So, yung direct material cost natin, tapos i-add mo yung cost added to production. So, 450. Ito yun. Okay? So, meron na tayong total material cost. Ang total material cost natin is 450. Okay? Ganda ng sulat ko. Sensya na. Okay? Next is the units material cost computation, kailangan ma-convert mo muna siya. Okay? So, i-convert muna natin siya, 450. So, ilan yung equivalent units of materials natin kanina? 900. Tama? Okay? So, 9 divided by 900,000. Okay? So, that is equivalent to magkano ang ating unit material cost. Okay? So, 450,000 divided by 900,000 and we have magkano? Mayroon tayong 0.50. Okay? Kindly check it. Okay? 450 divided by 900 is equivalent to 0.50. May magtatanong sa inyo dyan, ma'am, saan galing tong 50? Saan galing, ma'am, yung 400? So, going back to dun sa slide 15 ata. Ito, 15. Meron tayong direct materials na 50. And we have a cost incurred during the production na direct materials din natin na 400,000. Okay? So, para at least malino tayo. And we have the equivalent units of 900. Okay, so we have a unit material cost of 0.50. Okay, now, yan, dito muna. Bilis naman. Okay, so dito, we will be computing naman the conversion. Kung kanina, ang kinompute natin is the material cost, dito naman is the conversion cost. Okay, so we have, magkano yung conversion cost natin? Balikan natin yung 15. Okay, meron tayong 35. Tapos, meron tayong conversion cost din naman dito na 170. Okay, so tandaan nyo yun, guys, ha? Okay? So, let's compute. How much is your conversion cost? We have 35. 35. Okay? Then, conversion costs. Cost added to production during June 1. Okay? So, 170,000. That is equivalent to 205. So, 205,000 ang ating total conversion cost. Okay? So, ang ating total conversion cost is 205. Okay? Divided by the equivalent units under of conversion cost. Magkano yung conversion cost natin? 820. O 820. Okay? So, 205 divided by 820,000. Magkano, anak? How much is that cost? Okay, so unit cost conversion, magkano? That is equivalent to 0. Magkano? Tama, 25. Okay, so sa material cost natin, unit material cost, 0.50. Ang ating unit conversion cost is 0.25. Okay, so ito yung computation niya. Okay, yan. So, yung kinompute natin kanina, computing the unit cost, ito yon. So, dito, ilalagay din lang natin para tally. Magkano? 450, 900. 450. 450. 900. Diba? 1, 2, 3, and that is 0.50. Okay. So now, let's proceed on the step 4. Step 4. Okay? So Kellogg charge total cost of 655 to the mixing department. Paano? Ito nga 'yon, 'di ba? Sa work in process natin, June 1, 850 and started into production 570. Okay? So preparing the reconciliation schedule, ito 'yon. Okay? So transferred out 700 times 0.75. 0.75 ba? Yes. Then material cost natin is 0.25. Bakit? Kasi ang conversion cost na nakuha natin is 0.25. So 700 times 0.75, 525. Then dito naman is 200 times 0.75, we have 100, and 120 times 0.25, we have 30, and that is 655. So, ito yung example guys ng, kasi ang hirap mag-compute. So, ito na lang yung ginamit kong ano natin. Okay, so ito yung production cost report. So, after computing all the three, yung una is the material cost, pangalawa is the conversion, and the total manufacturing. Okay, ito yung total manufacturing natin. Okay, ito yun. Total cost. Okay, so after computing that, ito na yung dapat na gawin ninyo. So, please, picturean nyo siya para magkaroon kayo ng idea kung paano nyo gawin yung production report, because I attach some activities that entails mainly more on the production cost report. Okay? So, malinaw tayo guys. Let's have a question here. Okay, so for example, Largo has a 10 pesos for materials and 30 for the conversion cost. If there are 2,500 units in ending work in process, 40% completes as to conversion costs and fully complete as to material costs. The total cost assignable to the ending working process inventory is how much? Okay? So, I will be giving you 10 counts or 15 para matapos ninyo before natin ipakita kung ano yung tamang sagot. Okay? Okay. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so is it A? Is it B? Is it C? Or is it D? Okay. So, ano ang sagot nyo dyan? Computing for the total cost assignable, ha? Okay. So, ito ang sagot. Letter B. Paano naging letter B? So, 25 times 10, that is, magkano? 25 times 10, that is 25,000 material cost. Now, let's get the conversion cost. 25 times 0.40, kasi 40% lang yun na complete, times 30, that is 30,000. So, 25,000 yung material cost, plus 30,000 na conversion cost, that is 55,000. Okay? Okay ba? Happy? Okay, so let's proceed to next. Okay, so the final comments for costing system. Most of the companies are often using a combination of the process cost and a job order cost system. So, operation costing is the hybrid system is similar to process costing, and its assumption that standardized methods are used to manufacture the company. And at the same time, the product may have some customized individual feature that requires the use of a job order cost system. So, another is for you to compute equivalent units using the FIFO method, pero alam ko hindi na nyo na ginagamit yung FIFO method. Just in case lang na may mga companies pa rin na gumagamit. Equivalent units under it, kailangan you have to perform. First, if you have to finish the units of beginning working process inventory, kung mayroon man, and complete the units started into production during the period. And last is you have to start but only partially complete the units in the ending process of the inventory. So, that's it for our discussion, the last part on about the equivalent units concerning the material cost and the conversion cost and the total cost. Okay, so para at least you can have a good production report or production cost report or the internal report for management that shows both the production quantity and the cost data for a production departments. Okay, I hope you learned something for the part 1 and the part 2 on how to use the process costing. Okay, so that's it, and thank you for listening. Good day.